I'm very excited today to introduce Erika Nabuurs. It is a Dutch name, but Erika is not Dutch. Well, doesn't live in the Netherlands. She's in Canada, and she's joining us today to introduce herself and tell us a little bit more about her work. I'm very excited that you're going to be our Wisdom Whispers host next week, and you're going to come and share more with us around specifically under the theme of going deeper to level up. Um, Erika, or Mele or Kanaya, which I really like the sound of that. Spirit of the Dolphins, is that right, Erika?
It is, yes, that's what it means. I'll share a little more about it too, yeah.
Yeah. Um, Erika is a medicine woman, an author, a TEDx and keynote speaker, and just a very interesting person. So, Erika, tell us a little bit more about you.
Well, where do I start? I guess we'll start with the Meliokanaya.
Mm-hmm.
My uh, my passion in life is to support people through the deepest and most intense experiences of their life. So, otherwise described as trauma. And um, for for me, the biggest opportunity is to dive as deep as possible into the intensity of that experience in order to finally access the feelings, let the body feel the intensity of the feelings in a parasympathetic dominant state. So that's the nervous system, and the nervous system has to be relaxed and regulated in order to truly be able to process our emotional experience. But often that experience the nervous system um, is unable to regulate during the intensity of an event or an experience in the moment, and it shifts into sympathetic dominance, so into the fight or flight response. And so, and I'll get into a little more explanation about that in the mastermind, but the crux of what I do involves helping the body to regulate into parasympathetic dominance so that we can dive into the emotional experience. And so in supporting others in doing that, I also focus on doing that for myself. And so I will take time um, to vision quest and there's other things that I do, but relative to the Meleokanaya, a few years ago, I decided to go on Vision Quest to Hawaii, and I went to the Big Island down to the southeast area and um, stayed on the beach for a week and
Nice.
swam out. Yeah, I swam out into the ocean, and I felt inspired to start singing, and I decided to just sing what was coming through from the energies of the water. And as I did, within 5 minutes, a pod of dolphins showed up, and um, five of them actually broke from the pod, and they came and swam a tight circle right around me with their eyes above water, and it felt purely as if they were welcoming me into the pod and into the family. And from that moment, then it was a good 2 hours where I was out there treading water and singing and changing my tone. And I would sing a lot faster, and they'd start jumping and spinning. And then I slowed it down, and they all stopped spinning. And a couple of them got up onto their back, and they had their flippers in the air, and they were just swimming gently as once I slowed the rhythm down. So they were responding directly to what I was offering, and then we continued to play, and then eventually I started to tire and I swam back in. But every day I would go out and I'd start singing, and every day the pod swam in from the ocean and played with me for an hour, sometimes 2 hours. And towards the end of the week, a local ended up gifting me the name Meliokanaya, which means spirit of the dolphins, because he said, well, they're around here, but they never come in daily, and they never stay as long as they are staying when you're out there. Like, they'll show up for 20 minutes and then they'll leave, but they're here for multiple hours. So you're definitely influencing them, and you deserve this name. So
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
it's
Yeah.
really And I've had connection with animals all my life, and I connect with bear and deer, and had a couple cougar encounters and such. But um, so it's epic on another level.
Yeah.
And it's also exciting to be working directly with the dolphins now, and to have this pod of wild dolphins that are willing to participate with me in supporting others in accessing this level of return to dance and play. And that's a fundamental desire of the work that I do, is getting people through the depths of their pain, the depths of their trauma, in order to access, once again, the celebration of life. The fact that we are here to truly celebrate and to discover and to experience, and to allow our body to remember what it feels like. And the dolphins live purely in a state of play. That's all they do all day long. And whenever I'm out there, they want to play. They'll play with tea leaves. They'll pick up stuff off the bottom of the ocean. They'll throw it around. It's absolutely epic. And everyone deserves to experience this level of joie de vivre. It's really incredible.
That's amazing. It's actually, yeah, wow. And it's the ultimate connection, isn't it? It's that connection that transcends species. And I mean, to be in water, which is their home ground, really, and not necessarily ours, must be amazing.
It is. And I touch on that. Actually, I might speak a little bit about it at the mastermind, but at the retreat that I do, we do focus on telepathy and communication beyond language, because language itself is actually restrictive and limiting. And there's so many levels of lost in translation, from the point of occurs in the heart, getting it to the brain to translate it into language, getting it from the brain to the tongue, getting it from the tongue through space, through the next person's filter into their brain, from their brain to their interpretation, and down finally to their heart, which is the space of singularity and pure love. And so there is there's many levels of lost in translation that happen in that attempt to communicate. Whereas if we can just cut out all the extra jargon and focus on telepathic communication, then it's heart to heart communication. And that's what is happening with the dolphins. They're feeling me, I'm feeling them. And it's happening in a space of heart coherence. So it's the next level of our opportunity to connect with each other and interrelate with our own species and every other species that exists. So it's really exciting.
I know, it's like magic, and anybody that knows me knows that I have a problem with language and our interpretation of each other's meanings and how we connect to each other, because all of it's lost in the sounds that we make, and we've agreed on certain meanings to them, which doesn't always mean the same to everybody. So yeah, you definitely touching a point that is very dear to me as well. But you're doing it now, so you're connecting, you're using the dolphins or the play within the dolphins and that kind of connection as a gateway to the work that you're doing around trauma specifically. I also just want to go back quickly and ask you to just give us a layman's version of the difference between parasympathetic and sympathetic. Because as you said, sympathetic is the fear, flight or fight mode that we go into. And I know through breathing, we can often kind of access parasympathetic. The Wim Hof kind of cold water, that elements are also very good with connecting that or activating our parasympathetic nervous system. But just a quick kind of what's your take on the importance of connecting to that more?
Wow, thanks for that question. I don't know if I can keep it short.
Yeah.
So the nervous system has several branches. The branch of the autonomic nervous system is divided into parasympathetic, nervous system and sympathetic nervous system. So autonomic meaning that this is the automatic response system of the body, of the organism. So sympathetic dominance is fight, flight, or freeze. It is a stress state that completely shifts the physiology in many ways in order to help the being survive imminent threat of death. That's what the sympathetic nervous system is designed for. It is going to get you away from lions, tigers, bears, and more recently, guns and knives. The parasympathetic nervous system is known as rest and digest. So this branch of the nervous system is designed to help you sleep, help you restore yourself. It's designed to help you digest your food, absorb your food, assimilate your food. So our body ideally is supposed to be in parasympathetic dominant state most of every day. However, we have, as a culture and as a society, we have shifted the experience of the nervous system in such a way that we now perceive threat of life in things like traffic, deadlines, taxes, even emotional interactions. People get stressed by emotional experiences. And that's the main thing that I work on supporting people in, is learning how to how to downregulate or slow down the sympathetic dominance. So how to shut off the fight or flight response and reactivate the rest and digest or parasympathetic. So to reactivate that system in the moment of a triggering experience. So if you're in an encounter with someone and you're experiencing these emotions flaring, you're able to regulate your entire system in order to move through this experience fully and completely and interact in the way that you want to access the words that you need to speak the truth that you need to, so that you're not suppressing anything and end up ruminating on this experience in the future, or end up creating a trauma from this experience. So, and now I'm going on tangents, but to bring it back to the nervous system, the sympathetic dominant or fight or flight is a system that causes increased heart rate, increased respiration rate. It causes blood volume to move from the digestive organs out into the arms and legs so that you can either run or fight. And so it's actually shutting down the capacities of the digestive system to a great degree. It's also shutting down the capacities of the immune system, because the perceived threat is now external, and all of the body's focus is get away from this threat of life. And so when people now are creating stress states out of micro experiences, they're keeping their body in a stress state 70, 80, 90% of every day, even to the point of sleep. There's a lot of studies that demonstrate that people are remaining in a high state of stress during sleep. So the best way to identify that is cortisol levels and adrenaline levels. And these hormonal parameters are measurable. And we're finding that people are remaining in a high level of stress even through sleep, which means that they're not getting the restorative experience. Their body is continuing to then break down, create disease, because the immune system is shut down and the digestive system is shut down. So they're not assimilating nutrients. They're not rebuilding their body. And so when ideally we perceive a threat, we mount a stress response, we either get away from it or we die, but we get away from it, and then the body is meant to recalibrate and settle back into the rest and digest state, reactivate all of the digestive organs, start secreting all of the digestive juices, and to reactivate the immune system so that the immune cells are able to scavenge through the body on a regular basis and maintain the internal environment, slow down the heart rate, slow down the respiration rate, and such and so on. So the focus is in learning how to I identify the fact that we're in a triggered state, that we're mounting a stress response, and then to use new tools to shift the body back into parasympathetic so that we can walk in a relaxed manner and breathe
Mm,
in a relaxed manner. And you mentioned breathing. Yes, breath is essentially our number one
mm,
ally in accessing parasympathetic dominant nervous system. So it's our ally in creating the rest and digest state. And
mm,
there are many breathing techniques that can be used, and we'll go over a couple of them in the mastermind,
mm,
and then we apply them in practice at the retreat. But they're in addition to breathing, accessing the imprints of
mm,
traumas that reoccur for people,
mm.
um, to me is it's a fundamental work such that
Yeah.
we're not band-aiding anything. We're not like trying to compensate by just activating breath. Um, but we're actually eliminating the trauma imprints, which is allowing us to shift our behavior and the way that we interact with ourselves and with others in life in general.
So it's not putting the eye flaps on, it's kind of moving through it and experiencing it, but kind of realizing that I have the tools and I will be okay, because there is no, the threat is created internally most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, fascinating work, and I love what you're doing, because I think there's so much in the world that is trauma based, and whether it's ancestral trauma or our own traumas, it's all with us, and we are the generation, I hope, to address these things in a way that is healing and not band-aid,
Exactly.
ignore the problem situations.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I just want to share too, you mentioned some is generational. And the way that I work with people is in, again, recognizing the slight inconsistencies in language, but also recognizing that time is not actually a linear progression either, and that things are overlapping and cyclical. And so I acknowledge generational trauma to be the same thing as past life trauma, to be the same thing as inner child trauma, and recognizing that it's all occurring due to a seeding moment. And it's that seeding moment that we need to access, that imprinting moment that we need to access. And it could be declared to be in childhood, but if we look into a past life or we look back through the generational line, we will see a similar imprint or a similar seed that was planted in the consciousness, in the experience of this being. And and so I don't necessarily discriminate between those paradigms. I'll use the language that people are most comfortable with. If they relate to the inner child, we'll speak about the inner child. If they relate to generational traumas, we'll use that language. And if they relate to their past lives, we'll use that language and investigate that route. But for me, I'm accessing all simultaneously, and working to find the source imprint moment that people identify with in order to then take them into. So there's an extensive process that I do to bring their consciousness into that moment live through meditation, and we are connecting with them. There may be others who participated in the trauma imprint, but the focus is to interact with themselves in that moment, to apologize for any shortcomings that they may have had during that experience, things which resulted in them activating a sympathetic response and preventing them from walking through the experience in a way that would have allowed um, a full and integral experience for them and would have prevented the trauma imprint in the first place. So we go into it, and we then we work through the apologies, and then we work to regain trust with their consciousness in that moment. So I call them the fractured pieces of consciousness that are,
Okay.
yeah, fractured pieces left scattered throughout
Yeah.
time or frozen in time. And so we go to those moments And then once we've gained the trust of that level of consciousness, then we draw them into the being, the current consciousness being, and then we bring both back into the current body and work at assimilating and integrating. And it's a really exciting process, to the point where I've had several people say that when they actually go back to that memory, they no longer see themselves. They can't see the child there in the memory anymore. The place is there. There may be certain features still there, but they don't see their traumatized inner child like they did every time they would go back. So it's really incredible. It's really
Yeah.
incredible.
So it's in a way integrating the psyche and all those aspects of the psyche that has experienced a trauma on whichever level it is in the now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that is, to me, that is the fundamental way in which we can actually bring ourselves into living in the now. Like, there's a lot of trendy words about people talking about stay focused in the now, live in the now. And yes, in theory, that's great. But how do we actually apply that in a way that is full and comprehensive? How do we bring all of those fractured pieces that are left scattered all over the place, but bring them all into the now too, because they are actually, it's those fractured pieces that are actually the drivers of being triggered in the now, which then pull us out of the now and pull us back to or over to those traumatized moments, and pull us into a behavior that is driven by that traumatized moment.
And then reliving that trauma in those fractured pieces. Yeah.
Exactly.
Very, very interesting stuff. I could talk to you for hours. So you also a co-author. There's another aspect to trauma therapy is something you do, but there's also an aspect of birth, helping people kind of do that side of coming into life, but also giving life. You're a co-author in the book The Gifts of Pain, and you write specifically about from miscarriage to motherhood. Do you want to give us just a quick overview as to that aspect of you, and what draws you to that?
So again, my focus is trauma, and in working with trauma, I, over a few years, started seeing that a lot of my patients were actually women who had experienced some form of trauma during the pregnancy or birth experience, and or leading up to conception during the attempt to conceive period. And so I have shifted into about 25% of my practice is focused in fertility, pregnancy, and postpartum. And I myself also lived through several miscarriages, and it was during the time when I was in school and I was highly stressed, and my body was living in sympathetic dominance 80 to 90% of every day. When you are in, so that's another aspect I didn't mention before, but when you're in stress mode, your body is focused on survival of life, which means it is absolutely not focused on reproduction. It's not going to try and reproduce another being when it's trying to survive itself. So reproductive system is affected when we're in high stress state. And okay, and I'll get into that more again in the mastermind. So in this chapter, I talk about the intensity of the experience of miscarriage, and I go into my emotional experience of it, to the point where I was able to live it through and let go. And for me, the liberty truly was in letting go, but not just letting go of the baby lost, but letting go of the entire need to be a mother, the expectation that I was supposed to be a mother. So letting go of this whole paradigm to the, and I go through my process and my ceremonial process of how I let go of that need, and committed to myself and committed to my life and taking care of myself and developing myself, and how doing that actually allowed my system to recalibrate, allowed me to start shutting down my high levels of stress, and recalibrating my body to the point where, without anticipating it, um, I became pregnant, and I stayed pregnant, and I birthed not one live baby, but then two live babies.
Yeah. And very cute ones at that. I've met them, so
They're pretty
it's
epic.
lovely, isn't it? Yeah.
And this was only after I had finally let go of the need to have children in this life, and accepted that I'm not going to be a mother who has birthed her own biological babies. And but letting go of that, paradoxically,
Yeah.
allowed for it to happen. And so a big focus of what I do in working with moms who are struggling with fertility or wanting to get pregnant but not able, the focus is to actually let go of the need and focus on what is the void that you're trying to fill, because I guarantee you, you're trying to fill a void if you're so attached to this need to have a child. And so as we refocus onto ourselves and give ourselves all the love that we're trying to put out
Yeah.
into another being,
Yeah.
that's what allows us to then nourish ourselves in a way that we are able to create life in any form, not necessarily a baby, but possibly a baby.
Yeah. Because the whole letting go is that it's not necessarily going to be a baby, but it is, it's the law.
Exactly.
um, and it's tuning into that. And I think this has been proven over and over again. As soon as you can let go of that intense need for something and understand, and there's gratitude involved in all of that. um, that is what opens the door to these things to come to us, and that's a beautiful practice. um, there's so much. Um, you've also done a TEDx talk. You really busy creating awareness around what you are doing. But a quick look at the retreat. It's happening in September. This will be the first one, or the inaugural kind of, and it is very much a gateway. I kind of see it as both sides, beginning and end. It's kind of the main. I mean, it just sounds magical. So, just walk us through that experience, or what that means. What is the retreat about? Who is it for? And how can people get in touch with you?
Sure. Uh, and yeah, gateway is a perfect descriptor. It's basically a taste of what the depths of where I will go with you in the trauma therapy, and the outcome. It's a taste of the outcome post working on this depth, or working on the at this level of intensity. So um, it's a 5-day retreat wherein we spend, the first couple of days are spent identifying current triggers and or current undesirable behaviors that you perceive to be interfering with your personal growth or with your professional growth. And so we're focused on those triggers or those behaviors specifically, which then allow me to gain access to imprinted traumas, origin traumas, or origin patterns that need to be specifically addressed and cleared. And so you'll get a taste of what that clearing process looks like. Although my full program, Metamorphosis, is actually a 3-month program with a minimum of 40 hours of in-person work. So it's truly a retraining process. So it's really just a surface
Taste.
taste at the
Yeah.
but it gives you an idea of how deep you may still need to go, and how entangled a lot of these traumas actually are, and how they are influencing you in daily life, and the real need to to resolve them, to go into them in order to resolve them, um, and so that you can truly move forward in your own personal growth and in your professional development. And so as we move through that in the first couple of days, then we'll work into techniques in order to clear some of that and give our body the experience of being in a parasympathetic state and being able to maintain that parasympathetic state for several hours at a time, which, and I call it clearing the noise. So as we clear the noise from our periphery, we bring ourselves into our center, and that's when we can access our heart-based coherence, and that's when we can actually communicate in an integral way with ourselves, with others around us, and with other species. So we spend the next couple of days focusing on staying in the parasympathetic state, and we'll be going into the water every day, but we're only going to endeavor to reach out to the dolphins in the last couple of days after we've done a decent amount of internal work, because if we're projecting shit out, and then generally speaking, we're going to repel them. They just want to play. That's all they want to do. They don't want to deal with your shit. So,
you deal with your shit and then you come and play.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to help you deal with your shit, and then we're going to go play with the dolphins.
That sounds pretty cool to me.
Yeah, and because they're wild. These are wild dolphins. I in no way corral them, other than I sing to them from a heart space, and they respond to me. And they've done that consistently and regularly every time I go out. And like I returned a few years later, I did the same thing, and they show up. And it's a particular pod. There's a couple of dolphins in there that I can identify. And so so we need to be in a state of coherence and openness to receive in order to truly ensure that a group of us will be able to call them in, and that they'll want to respond and play with us. So that's the opportunity. It's really exciting. It's in a really beautiful area of Hawaii, and I'm so humbly honored to share this experience with anyone and everyone who's ready to play, because everyone deserves to play in this life. And it's next level.
I can just imagine. It sounds pretty magical to me. Definitely. And so this is your website, mecca.life.
Yes.
And people can get in touch with you there. You're on LinkedIn. You can join us next week. I'll pop a link to the Eventbrite. It's pay as much as you can. It's if you want to come and learn from and with Erika. Anything else? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I forgot to mention how people can connect. So website is the best, and at mecca.life. If you choose sanctuary, then that will take you to the dive deep to level up with the dolphins page. And there's a couple opportunities on that page to, it's a button, meet now, and it'll take you right to my calendar, and we can do a live call. So that's the fastest way to connect with me. And yes, perfect. Right there.
Okay.
So on that page, there's a meet now button, and that'll take you to my calendar, and we'll get on a call, and we can talk about all your dreams and desires and your challenges, and the opportunity to start with the retreat if that's what is of interest for you, and otherwise we can just have a conversation and see where you're at.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to have connected with you, and one day I'm hoping to join you in Hawaii, and
I'll get you there.
That would be amazing. It really will. And I'm sure there are some octopi there as well. I'm a very much an octopus.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Erika. We will see you again next Wednesday at 9 a.m. your time, which is 5 p.m. British summer time. And I am really looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.